Yes, we're here to talk about it again. We're going to put you through this one more time to talk about Arsenal losing to Aston Villa. I am going to be joined by three wonderful people to hopefully give them and ourselves some therapy as well. But just try, sit back, relax, and enjoy another hour of Arsenal and Aston Villa. Hello, welcome to the Gooner Talk podcast. Back again with you guys for another show, joined by two wonderful people and Drew for this evening's show. And we're going to talk about some fantastic stuff that we've been witnessing over the last 24 hours. First off, Drew, how are we, mate? Are we well? Are we good?
I'm awful now because you opened your mouth. But other than that, I'm doing all right.
It is. We're off to a good start.
Yeah, good to see you.
I just remembered. Yes, you too, mate. Owen has just pointed out in the chat, I paid $14.99 for 90 minutes of depression last night. This is free, so I'm staying. And I just remembered that the two games I've paid for, that I've spent £30 on now, has cost me Leicester losing over to Leicester, and now losing 3-0 to Villa. So I've spent 30 quid since Arsenal scored no goals and us concede 4. So it's going great, this pay-per-view whole scheme, which is wonderful. Raph, good to have you back on the show, mate. Always a pleasure to have you on.
Definitely, mate. Definitely. Apart from, I wish it was under better circumstances, but hey, we're here.
Yes. This is a theme, isn't it? I can just sense this now. And finally, making his debut on TGT this evening, it's Cian Rawdon. I'm hoping I'm pronounced that correctly. I probably haven't.
Cian Rawdon,
yeah. There you go.
Thank you.
When we have Owen who's on the show as well, who's also Irish, as you can see from the spelling of his name. We called him Ian, we called him Owen, so we can't pronounce Irish words. It just doesn't come out properly. Apparently, that's what we do.
Yeah, no.
Do you want to just give people a background as to Arsenal wise, your life, and how we know each other as well? Might be a good thing to talk about.
Yeah, so basically, I grew up with a Liverpool family. My dad was a Southampton fan. So I'm getting a lot of abuse lately, obviously. But I always loved an underdog as a kid. So we had the invincible season, and then we started going down. So the Arsenal I know really isn't really a Premier League trophy winning team. So I did have an underdog team. And the reason I know you is because myself and Tom, we're going to be part of a new app coming up called Your Feed. And we're going to be hosts for Arsenal Football Club. So if it became live today, so if you do have the App Store, please download it now, and you will get to hear a lot more of me and Tom.
Yeah, I will.
There's some issues.
Sorry, go on, Raph. Go on.
I was just going to say, a little part of me died when you just said I support an underdog team. I was like, oh my God. Yeah,
what have we become? This is us now.
What have we become? Wow.
Yeah, no, it happened me too. No, the fact that obviously we've watched Liverpool go from the bottom to now the top to what they are now. It's just, I've seen my family the way they are with it. So yeah, that's why I feel like we're down there now.
Yeah, sad times. Sad, and we can't even perk the listeners up now because of the game we're about to talk about. But anyway, yeah, the app Your Feed, which is I'll put it in the chat. It's hold on, there we go. Is effectively this new app that's coming out. They've had a couple of issues with actually launching in terms of adding people to the feeds so far. I'm probably going to do a separate show dedicated to talking about it in the not too distant future when it is properly out and live. But it's quite a cool forum whereby the hosts, which is myself and Cian and two other great guys called Cass and Dre, talking. Basically, you provide a topic in the form of a video in which one of us guys will record, and then people can respond to those questions that we put on the video, and it becomes quite collaborative and really, it's genuinely quite an original idea that I was really interested in getting involved with, and now it's become a reality. So there will be more information about that coming out in the not too distant future. But for now, let's get down to the fun stuff and talk about Arsenal's 3-0 loss to Villa. Drew, I think you're the perfect person to start this off. What was your initial reaction to the game, mate?
I mean, normally, contrary to popular belief, I don't get angry all the time, just some of the time. But certainly yesterday I was absolutely angry. I mean, it's kind of hard to. I mean, a lot of people will single out particular players, but for me, I think I'm looking at all the players bar one or two of them, honestly. And then more importantly for me, I think people really have to start looking at Arteta now for a lot of different reasons. And I'm sure we'll come on to that moving forward. I know Raph has a lot to say on that. I'm sure I'll also have a lot to say on that too. But it's just frustrating that we can sit here and we can analyze and we kind of week after week, it's even when we get the result, we still have the same criticisms of the performance, despite even if we pick up 3 points. And for me, that's kind of the frustrating part of it. And I can understand when new or new-ish managers want to come in and really instill whatever ethos that they're bringing to the table, but you have to have a better balance of figuring out what you want to do, but also how to incorporate the players best. And sometimes that requires some sacrifices in terms of what you want to do on a personal level. And I don't really see that sacrifice or that sort of give and take coming to the fore right now. And I think that for me personally, that's my frustration. Whether the fans agree or not is another matter. But I think, first of all, for me, I think the honeymoon period ended when the season started. I feel like, it's an awkward time with COVID and the way the restart happened, and under the circumstances, I can sympathize. But he had the amount of matches he had last season. He had the preseason. In moving forward in this season, you kind of say, well, while it might not be perfect, you want to see improvement across certain areas, and we really haven't. The chance creation is still a really big problem, and for me, that's not down to the players; it's down to the system. And we can come on to that later, but you could have thrown a peak Mesut Özil in this team, and it wouldn't have really mattered yesterday. And I think when you can look at it in those terms, you know what the problem really is. So that's my initial reaction. I'm not necessarily surprised. For name in recent history, Villa are a smaller club per se, but they're really not, and they've done incredibly well in the summer to bring in reinforcements, and every player they brought in this summer performed yesterday. And Grealish is still playing at top level, and that for me is the difference. They had their big names perform, and our big names, all of them went absent, including Aubameyang, Lacazette, Pepe, all those players were essentially shadows of themselves. So you have to ask if the bedrock of the system is really there to bring out the best of the best that we have, and for me, it's not. So that's where I'm at currently.
Raph, I think a lot of this show is going to be talking about kind of Arteta and some of the decisions that he's making and should make in the future, but just briefly, because I think it's important to give Aston Villa credit as Drew was there. They were awesome, weren't they? They were excellent. Like, they had an amazing game. The finishing from them was on point. The chances that they created, they took. I mean, we had a warning within the first minute of how on it they were going to be, and we're very lucky to kind of get away with that. So I say very lucky, but we were still lucky to get away with it at the end of the day. And how much do you put this down to an amazing Villa victory, and how much do you put down to a really awful Arsenal performance?
Honestly, a bit of both. I think that they, credit to them, they set out with an intent straight away. You could see that they were we've got to get at them from the beginning. Don't kind of give them time to impose themselves on the game. They had a clear game plan. If you look at it, a lot of their attacks were down the right, down our right, down their left with Grealish, Barkley, overlapping Target, overlapping Grealish when Grealish was coming inside. There was a couple of balls from Douglas Luiz that he played over the top from kind of the right-ish side to the left, which one of the goals came from, actually. So and Watkins as well, in terms of his mixture of hold-up play and obviously running the channels and just. It was just a good performance from start to finish. Defensively, they were tight. They just had a clear understanding of what everybody's roles and responsibilities were, and that was coupled with the fact that we just set up completely wrong. I think they understood that they overran us in midfield. I think Arteta playing 3 at the back against Villa at home, to me, is laughable, if I'm honest. I just think we just set up incorrectly. But I think the most damning thing for me is not even the fact that we set up, because I could understand us setting up with the same team that won against Man United and played so well. I can understand that, even if I don't necessarily agree with the team. It was the fact that we could see that it was going wrong from the first minute, and he just didn't change it. Literally from start to the end of the game, we played the same formation. If you look at the substitutes, obviously one was enforced, but he brought on Nketiah for Lacazette. He brought on Pepe for Willian. He just didn't change it. He didn't adapt in any way. There was no kind of, there was just nothing in regards to tactical kind of adaptability and fluidity in the way that he continued to set up. And I think that was the most damning thing for me. I just felt like he could have almost made those subs half an hour before the game, and even just time 60, 65 minutes, bring on someone to replace, bring on Nketiah to replace Lacazette, bring on Pepe to replace Willian. And I just think that the only game that he's actually, and I think it's the best game that we've played in terms of period within a game, was the Sheffield United game, when he actually changed and tweaked the formation, and we actually looked like an attacking threat. Like that moment, that 20-25 minute period, probably been the best football that we played this season. And I just thought, why have you just continued to persist with that formation, the way we were playing
again since?
And we've never tried it again since. I just don't understand it. And that was probably the most damning thing for me, just the lack of kind of adaptability.
Cian, when it comes down to the way that Arteta has managed things, as Raph kind of touched upon there, we've gone from, if you look, say, before this season started, or and when winning the FA Cup, Arteta kind of took over from a real kind of mess that Unai Emery had left over. He improved things defensively. We got a lot better because he realised the problem, switched us to a back three. Players like Mustafi and Xhaka were imperative to how we were playing. They were really important in playing well. Mustafi wasn't without his flaws. It's what Mustafi does, but he was still better than he was prior to Arteta's appointment. And then going into this season, we've seen additions made. Gabriel's come in, performed well. Thomas Partey's now come into and performed excellently. And yet there are still the same mistakes being made. It's a hard question to ask you, but what is it in your mind that Arteta needs to change for our fortunes to turn?
To be honest, I feel like with Arteta, he's trying too hard, in the sense of, we're known for having a bad defense, in the sense of having 4 at the back, so he puts it to a 3. And then if you do put it to a 3, people are expecting us to defend well anyway. Like, when Emery was here, he said straight away he'd rather a 4-3 win than a clean sheet, which it would be good because it's 3 points at the end of the day. But I feel like with the team we have, it's a very attacking team. Gabriel is a great addition, don't get me wrong. He's played so well since he came to Arsenal. I just feel like we need the 4 at the back to then let our players really go forward. But again, we can't do that 4 at the back if we don't have our attacking midfielder.
Yeah, and I think it comes down partly to a lack of, I kind of put it down to a lack of trust in our defence still. I mean, Drew, do you get on board with the idea that maybe he sees what our defence is capable of in that back 3, which we, if we're honest, we are still kind of, when we're on the defence, Saka drops into that wing-back position, Tierney kind of drops into that left centre-back role. And then when we want to break, or when we want to try and build up from the back after defending, there's kind of not enough numbers in the final third or the middle third of the pitch to build on from that, and eventually the attack breaks down and we just don't really create anything of note. So does Arteta need to put more trust in our players like Gabriel and Tierney and Bellerin, who has looked better than he has done previously? Is it down to him trusting those guys to then add more personnel to the midfield, or is it deeper than that?
I think it's deeper. I think it's just an insistence on him to kind of really hammer in how he wants to play. And the whole idea of when you start a midfield pairing like Partey and Elneny, you're supposed to have that protective shield for the defense to allow your expressive players for the forward to go and affect the match, and they're not doing that. And for me, that's one of the biggest problems is we have a very fine margin to perform. If we have to perform at top level in defense, and then at base level value, then sort of try to get that sort of bedrock to go forward with. But the fact is we're also not creating enough chances to offset the fact that things at the back sometimes can be shaky as well. And something has to give, right? So if you have defensive reinforcements in Gabriel, and Tierney is improved. Bayern's improved. David Luiz has been good. So if that's your back four, and if you have trust in Bertolino, as you should, if you're Arteta, then you have to take the handbrake off for the forward, and we don't. So what it comes down to is, say for example, right now Oba and Laka each only average about 1.3 shots per match. That's not even shots on frame. That's shots total. So between them, they average less than 3 shots per match. That's not nearly good enough when you compare against their contemporaries. How many shots does, say, Harry Kane, Jamie Vardy, Sergio Aguero, those types get per match? 3, 4, 5. You look at other strikers around Europe. Chiro Immobile takes like 56 shots a match. Lewandowski, again, for all of Lewandowski's finishing ability, how many chances does he get per match with Bayern? And that's the whole point, is when you have players in the final third that can contribute and are effective in and around the area, you have to get them on the end of chances. And we're not doing that either. So that means we have a very finite amount of wiggle room to commit errors in an attacking sense. So that header that Lacazette should have scored, and I don't want to debate of whether he should have or he shouldn't. I agree he should have. But the fact is that was Lacazette's only chance that match. So when that's his only chance, you look at it through the scope of, well, he missed a big chance, but that was his only chance. So he's not getting the ability to make up for it with another chance or a third or a fourth like other strikers do. Same thing with Oba. Oba didn't have a single shot on frame or shot period yesterday. So if we look at that, then you can say, well, where are we really going to try and get these goals to come from? And and then if you make that one mistake at the back that leads to the 1-0 down, you're not giving yourself the platform to come back.
Let's focus on that point. Let's focus on that point that you made there about Lacazette missing that one chance. That he got one chance in the game, he missed it, and the reaction on social media and on lots of different platforms has been, get rid of Lacazette. He's not good at all. That's where he's best. Now, if Laka, if in your kind of theory, would you trust Lacazette to be our central striker if we were creating 5, 6, 7 chances for him? Or would you rather see Aubameyang in that central striking slot with that same frequency of chances coming in? And say this persists and Arsenal can't create 5, 6 chances per game, would you think that by putting Aubameyang there, we have a better chance of converting those big chances when they arrive?
I don't necessarily think that's necessarily the case, and I think this is kind of where I think Raph and I agree, but also disagree about this. My
get your lightsabers out now, guys. This is where it's going to start.
No. The thing I've been saying about Oba is that it's not if you play him centrally or if you play him wide. It's how you task him in the role, and we've seen it at Arsenal before. He can play out on the left and still get goals, but when you aren't playing in a system that allows him to utilize his best attributes as an attacking player, he's not going to score even if you play him centrally. So I'm not against removing Laka from the 11 and then putting Oba central, but if you put Oba central but you still play this way, even Oba's not going to get goals. That's kind of my point. It doesn't really matter who's playing there at the minute. Because you can then say, well, Oba has this understanding. He wants to make runs forward, play off the shoulder. That's all well and good. But if you analyze Oba this season, how often have you seen Oba make runs off the ball if he knows he's not going to get it? So all this movement and understanding and pace that he brings to the table goes awry because he's only using it when he feels he himself is going to benefit of it. That, for me, is my gripe with Oba. He's not doing that off-the-ball work that can actually bring other players into the match. So that's kind of my gripe with him. It's that he has this pace, this understanding. Even just Oba on the pitch alone is just his mere presence is a threat. It's like Thierry Henry. When Henry would drift left, other teams would shit themselves because you're not going to know what he's going to do. Even if there are times when Henry wouldn't get a goal on a match, 2-3 matches, but he would the way he moved off the ball, the way he would contribute in other areas other than goal scoring would allow someone like Robert Perez to get a goal. Sylvain Woutor, Freddie Ljungberg, Dennis Bergkamp, that would help others. Oba's not doing that. So then you have to say, well, if you move him centrally, maybe you get him on the end of service. But the fact is we're not creating chances. And even Oba does miss key chances. We've seen that since he came to the club. I saw it at Dortmund all the time. He's not perfect. I would probably say that yesterday, if Obo was on the other that chance, maybe he would have had a larger chance to score the goal, but Obo's not brilliant with his head either. So he could have easily missed it as well. So there's no guarantee.
I want Giroud back.
I mean,
if we're going to play like this.
If Giroud is in that position, you think he puts that away maybe 8 times out of 10. So yeah, for me, again, it's not about, right now for me, it's not about who you're playing where, it's how you're playing them. The platform you're building or not building to allow your players to go and be influential. We're not doing that on any position, really.
Yeah.
You know, our best player yesterday, and this is telling for me, and then I'll let Raph. I know Raph wants to go at it as well. For me, when you look at it, at home against Villa, our best player on the day was Gabriel. Think about that for a moment. That for me is telling of the level of where we're at currently, and it tells you everything that needs to be fixed. You know, from midfield further forward, and that's probably the most frustrating thing for me personally. So.
Go on, Raph.
Yes, for me, and this is the thing, I don't disagree to an extent in that I agree that the system at the moment is not conducive to a lot of chances. We're not creating chances. That is as simple as that. I think the way that while we're structured, we're not actually creating. It seems like our structure was to, okay. And actually, I think it was Judges. Lee Judges said it before. He said it. I heard something yesterday or the day before. He is. It's a lot easier to structurally set up a defense than it is to create chances and set up a fluent attack. And I think that's what Arteta's kind of done. But I mean, in terms of Aubameyang and Lacazette, my main issue is, for one, I think Aubameyang should play down the middle. I think the main reason is not just the fact that Aubameyang has more opportunities to score. And I think that if you look at last season, his conversion rate, even under Emery, his conversion rate was one of the highest in the league. He wasn't getting loads of chances under Emery as well. But his conversion rate is a lot higher. Lacazette, I don't know what's happened, but his clinicalness has just completely disappeared. He's just not clinical whatsoever.
Well, it's confidence, surely, isn't
it? Confidence, but you say that, but he was 3-3 and still missed chances. He scored in a game and he scored against Liverpool and still missed a key chance. His confidence shouldn't have been as low as it shouldn't just be confidence. When you're 3-3, it shouldn't be confidence. He just misses chances.
Those 3 goals that he scored,
look at them
individually.
Yeah, they were awful. But then, if you look at strikers, and obviously when I used to play up front, strikers, any goal goes in, it breeds confidence. I remember Defoe. He used to score all types of goals. If he ever went on a goal drought, he'd score off his shot, off his shoulder, off his thigh. Next minute, as soon as he strikes a finish 25 yards out, it looks like he scored 10 in 10. It's just sometimes confidence is about, once the ball goes in the back of the net, that's when you're confident. I just think with him, for whatever reason, and it could also be another thing is, and another nuance is, he could be just knackered. So when he does get chances, he's in a position where he's actually so tired mentally and fatigue-wise, he's just not as clinical as he could be because of the system we're playing. But I say that to say that one of the main things that I think of Aubameyang playing in the middle is not just that I think he'd be more clinical, is it also allows another creative player to play. I don't think that Aubameyang, while he's clinical, I think left or in the centrally, he would score goals. But I think the main thing is it allows maybe a Pepe and a Saka to play as the front three, as opposed to a Lacazette, who right now isn't offering us much in terms of general play. He was a little bit at times last season, and I gave him that. Even when he wasn't scoring, sometimes he'd hold up the ball and he would link up play would be better. But even that's kind of dropped off a little bit. So what I think is, you get goals from Aubameyang anyway, but what you may do is also unlock other areas in the team by playing wingers who are generally creative wingers who actually try and make things happen. I think we've also lacked a lot from players running off the ball, like in terms of. So I take that point with what Drew was saying in regards to Aubameyang off the ball runs, but sometimes I just don't think that people are finding him. I think ultimately, when you look at Aubameyang, he does actually make runs, but a lot of the time he makes a run and has to shift, has to then pull out again because nobody's actually trying to hit him quickly enough, unless it's maybe David Luiz. And it just shouldn't be our centre back. That's probably our most creative player. It just doesn't work. And I think ultimately, it's not just the fact that Aubameyang would score more goals, which I think he would anyway. I think it just would unlock the team in a much better way, because Aubameyang was the most creative player yesterday, literally. He was probably our most creative player yesterday with the crosses that he put on. He put one on the plate for Willian. I think there was another one that he for Dick. And it's just that shouldn't be happening. And I think that's the main issue why I think he has to play up front. He's just wasted on the wing, in my opinion. In this system anyway.
Yeah, so no, real fast. I mean, that you literally just said what I was about to say in your last 6 words. It's that if you want to play Oba, essentially, I'm all for it. You see what he can do in that position, but you have to then. And my issue is that if you move him centrally and then nothing changes, what are people going to say then? Are they going to say it's Oba's fault, or are they going to then finally look at the manager? The issue is you just have to look at Arteta and say, if you're going to have a striker like Aubameyang in your possession as a manager, your task should be to get my star striker on the end of chances, and he's not doing it, right? So you have to change. Something has to change, and that's what happened at Dortmund as well. When Oba finally got his chance to center forward, Dortmund literally changed the way they played. It took Oba 4 or 5 months to actually hit goal scoring form the year he started exploding for goals at Dortmund, but Dortmund had to shift their actual tactical ethos to make sure that he would score goals. So my question moving forward for you guys is do you think Arteta's willing to make that change? If he does make the change, I think we reap the benefits, because it also benefits someone like Pepe, maybe Nelson if he gets time, Saka, Emil Smith-Rowe if he comes in. But is he going to make it? So far, it doesn't seem like he's going to. So, yeah.
Cian, do you think Arteta's going to make that change?
I'm not really sure. For me, I think it should be changed in the sense of Oba should be up top, Pepe on the right. But for me, to be honest, I saw a comment there from Zamir. I really do think he's waiting for Martinelli. But again, you know me, Tom. I'm a big Hector Bellerin fan. A lot of people are getting on Hector Bellerin's case, saying that he's lost his pace and stuff like that. With his injury on his knee, it is hard to come back. It is a bit of a struggle, and it will play on his head. I had the same injury, and I am worried about Martinelli in the sense of a lot of fans are putting pressure on him already to come back and score goals for us straight away. I think we should start playing Saka on the left wing position. We need to start going into 4-3-3. And from the Europa League form, Joe Willock really needs to start adapting into the Premier League, because for me, I know he really loves going for goal. He loves going for goal before taking the pass to Oba or something like that. But he's a great threat going forward. I know people are saying Saka to go in the centre attacking mid. I was one of those people, but if you watch Saka, his right foot, he needs to work on it if he does want to be a centre attacker midfielder. But then if you look on the right-hand side, Willian, he isn't doing a lot. Like, I think it was our second goal yesterday. He was more of a right-back than Bellerin. Bellerin was sitting behind to pick out the next pass, and obviously get to that pass. But I just feel Bellerin's more attacking than Willian at the moment, especially in the last 2 games against Man United, Leicester. I feel like Bellerin had more chances than Willian has, so we need to start putting Pepe in there, getting the pace on, and we do need to find the pass through the defence that will bring Pepe onto the ball, because I feel like Pepe is trying too hard again to get past the defender. But yeah, no, I really get what you're saying in the sense of Aubameyang going into the middle, but he isn't great with his head, as Drew was saying, but you really need to think like Oba is taller than Lacazette, so he could have got to that ball easier than Lacazette yesterday, and get over it, because the second Lacazette hit it, it was straight in the air. And the thing is, when we were all watching the match, we all expected it to be, who did we make the right choice in goalkeeper? Is Leno the right choice? You can't make that comparison now, because we didn't get enough shots on target really show what
I didn't even test him, did we?
You can't make that test. So for Martinez, he was happy out. And the thing was, before the match as well, Aubameyang came out saying he got a text from Martinez saying, "I hope."
It really bothered me that.
I really hope you get a penalty and stuff like that. Like there was a few chances yesterday where, like the goal against Fulham and Liverpool, Oba should have hit it. It was like he didn't want to score against Martinez. It was weird. But yeah, for me, he has to play down the middle, and Lacazette needs to really knuckle down, because I think that miss against Liverpool is still playing in his head.
Yeah, I think we could talk about who goes centrally all the live long day. I do think it comes back a lot to what Drew was saying around the chance creation. It doesn't matter who's up. You can have Lewandowski up front if you're not creating enough chances for him. They're not going to score. They're not going to score as many goals, and that kind of comes on Drew. Now, Drew, I'm going to be really mean to you now, and I apologise. I apologise in advance for this question, but I thought I'd never have to talk about really mean guy to you and say that because of footballing reasons, Arsenal don't have their number 10 who is creative. I think we know. Has Drew gone? I thought you yeah. I think we have to talk about it at this point. I think it's right to talk about it at this point. Let me set the scene for you, and then I'll let you fall into a pile of misery. But effectively, Arteta has said that they have left Mesut Özil out of the team specifically for footballing reasons. Now, I don't think that is the reason. I think it is all financial, in my opinion. It's financial. It could be to do with attitude, but I don't think it can be down to footballing reasons, because we are so clearly lacking in central creativity that I think it is right to turn around and ask the question, why didn't we include him, and why, and are we now struggling without him? That's the noise I was expecting.
I mean, I would side with you more of I genuinely think that it's not just for footballing reasons. I think the way he was dropped, pre and post restart, I feel like that's so abrupt that, short of Ozil storming into his office and flipping his desk over and, giving him a black eye, why would you just immediately drop someone who was in pretty solid form when Arteta first came in? And Arteta spoke of, the quality that Ozil had and his desire to make him like a key part of the side. So for me, I think it's something different. I have no idea how we're supposed to address it, but I do also think, in hindsight, if you look at the way we have been playing, and as much as I love him, do you really think Mesut Özil would really suit currently? Can you see him sitting back deeper?
Okay, well,
in good shape and really doing that all forward?
Do you not think, though, that having Thomas Partey, we could afford a more lackadaisical number 10, and because ultimately we've got the players there now to cover his downfall?
I don't disagree with that, but that becomes irrelevant with how we're playing. If we were more free flowing and actually trying to dominate performances and really cementing ourselves on the match, I would agree with you. But we're not doing that, and that's the thing. Right now, we're in such a tactical gray area that no one knows what we are on an identity surface in terms of what we're trying to bring to the table. We don't possess the ball enough to say we're possession dominant. We don't counterattack frequently to say we're a direct, incisive team. We're also not parking the bus either. So what exactly are we? That's the lion's share of the problem, is no one can really sit there and pinpoint precisely what we are. And I mean, that was across the board. That was every criticism all of us had about Unai Emery was just that. It's, what the hell are we? We didn't know. And right now we don't know under Arteta either. So it's hard to really say what Mesut Özil will bring to the table. There's plenty of, you can look at a lot of analysis about Yesh, and you can see just how many men were sitting behind the ball, allowing Villa space. Could you see Mesut Özil doing that? And again, as much as I love him, Mesut Özil has historically, barred Werder Bremen, he's played on teams that dominated possession, were free flowing in attack. He had midfielders behind him to do that graft work that he's not going to do, and even for Germany as well. So, but that's kind of the key. If we're not going to be getting 56, 57, 58% possession of the ball, that maybe is when Mesut Özil in his current iteration would struggle. If this was a young Mesut Özil, again, when he was coming through, just after Schalke and at Bremen, then you could say that maybe it's a little bit different because Bremen played a brand of football that was more akin to incisive direct counterattacking rather than just dominant possession and intricate play and technical quality. So I don't think it would. Again, I don't think it's going to matter. And that's, again, I'm going to harp back to that point, is no matter who you say comes into the team right now, it doesn't matter unless we're willing to do what it takes. Right. And everyone's saying, how come Reiss Nelson's not getting a chance? Reiss Nelson is the type of player that does not suit whatever this is currently. He was excellent on his own in Hoffenheim because, again, they allowed expression in their attacking players. He was allowed to go and affect the match for the forward. He was allowed to drive play. He was allowed to use his pace, his technical quality. We're not even seeing that from Nico Pepe. Would we see that from Reiss Nelson now? Probably not. So, again, for me, that's just the biggest issue is systemic. And until the systemic problems are resolved, it's really going to be hard to sit here and say which players can step up and do job X, Y, Z for the manager or for the team, because we just don't really know. So, and Mesut Özil falls into the category. You could insert him to the lineup, right after the restart, after the international break, and he probably put in a poor performance, not because he's a bad player, but because what's his role? What are his tasks? Are they suited to him? On evidence, not really. So,
Just want to point out before we move on that I was playing devil's advocate there. I'd completely agree with what Drew's saying, but I've seen it raised by quite a few people on social media, so I thought it was right to bring it up. Raph, Drew said there about how until we remove the systemic issues with the lack of chance creation, things aren't going to improve no matter who plays. Now, I was going to talk to you briefly about maybe Willock's exclusion after his good performances in the Europa League. However, feel free to talk about that. But I do want to kind of pick up on that point from Drew, because I personally can't see things changing too much, even with the break, even with Arteta saying that he's going to say it's not acceptable how he played against Villa, because for the personnel that he's got, I don't see him getting more or playing with them differently right now. I just personally can't see it. So my question is that if that turns out to be the case, then surely when we come up against Leeds, who are a side that are offensive, that create lots of chances, we saw it against top sides like Liverpool. Yes, they lost the game, but they lost the game because Liverpool also created a lot of chances and took those chances. And whilst they do concede goals, they do pull off really decent performances and score a fair few goals as well. We then come up against a Wolves side that themselves are very defensively solid right now and are doing very well, despite they've had their first loss of the season, I believe it was against Leicester, but they are unbeaten up until that point, and they've scored a fair few goals themselves. And then, of course, we have a dreaded North London derby, which I could not be more fearful of right now. And do you see anything changing in those weeks? And if nothing does change, at which point I can only predict that it gets worse from this point. And I hate to throw such a pessimistic question towards you, but is there a stage where you turn around and go, it's not working, it's not changing? Are we waiting until January for Martinelli to come back? Are we waiting for a signing to be made? At what stage do you see things cutting the cords, or do you see things just eventually petering out like we saw with Arsene Wenger?
Just quickly on Martinelli, one, he wasn't really playing, like he wasn't exactly starting when he was fit for Arteta. So I don't see he's just going to come back and like save the day. I honestly could imagine Arteta. Well? Yeah, and I could imagine Arteta not playing him. He was playing him on the left, which is where he's not playing Aubameyang all the time. So, and Arteta he seems quite rigid in, if he thinks you're a left winger, you're a left winger. If you think you're a right winger, you're a right winger. If you think you're a centre forward, you're a centre forward. And he doesn't really deviate from, in his mind, what he thinks is your position. He seems very specific in what he thinks certain players should do, which I understand. Drew's point to a degree in the whole, does it matter who's playing where if the structure's still the same? Just on your point though, and obviously, with the Özil thing, I agree, but it's very bad optics. The optics are terrible. Like the fact that he's just sitting there and we can't create. I think he's still created like one of the most chances this year and played like 10 games. But
yeah,
I digress anyway. But I mean, in terms of how do I see things changing? I'm not sure. I think that he had this kind of the Wenger and the Emery thing. I guess all coaches have it where they look for the positives and they can kind of hang on the positives. I think this is the first time where he may have looked at it and said, this isn't working. I think he could have made excuses for every game so far. I think the Leicester game, we dominated possession. It was a bit of a snatch and grab. So you could have looked at the positives and said, we should have really won that game. You look at the Man City game and the Liverpool game, even though I don't agree, he looked like kind of took we lost, but we lost in a better way, kind of, or we can take back from the performance because we were competitive in the game. You look at some of the other games. Obviously, we've won the other games. The Man United game. I think this is the first game where he's looked at it and said this actually wasn't good enough. So he may take a bit more reflection, and he may actually maybe get a bit more counsel from experience. He might get Pep on the phone. Who knows? He may look at this game and actually say, I need to make some changes, which I'm hoping. Unfortunately, I do look at him and he seems quite stubborn in his approach and he seems quite resilient in what his philosophy is. So while he may just feel like an improvement in their attitude will garner better results, which I think will kind of play into his demise. And I think if it continues this way, I do want to give him, like, I don't think we should make any knee-jerk reactions and let go of him mid-season or anything like that. But I do think that this season, we can't keep going on without being in the Champions League. And I think that if he doesn't get in the Champions League this year, after being backed by, and let's face it, this is one of the first times that Kroenke's actually backed a manager with resources. So if he does then do that and he doesn't garner the results, I can envision some changes just because it doesn't look like we look like we've improved in some areas, but we've definitely gone off the boil in others. And we can't continually say that it's not Arteta and it's just the players. Like Pepe, for example, is a clear one. He's not the best out of Pepe. Pepe, I think the system is one of the main reasons why Pepe, he's always hugging the touchline. If you looked at him at Lille, he was able to counter-attack. He was able to kind of have a free roll. He was able to actually drift in and around the middle. You see a lot of his goals, and a lot of the goals he scored for Arsenal are central. A lot of the goals that he scores is him actually coming off the touchline and getting involved. He doesn't do that enough. You then look at someone like a Willock, and I'm not the biggest fan in the world of Willock in terms of maybe technically and stuff. What he does offer us is running off the ball. He actually makes space for players like Pepe to actually run into because he makes runs beyond the striker. And if it is a kind of metacratic kind of, if you're playing on form, then you'll get a chance, then why is Willock not even on the bench? You just start to look at these decisions and think, and I'm sure we'll probably get into the Saliba one, but it's another one. You look at some of the decisions that Arteta's making, and you start to think, there's something not quite right. And that's the only thing why I'm not as optimistic about him changing things as maybe I would have been at the beginning, where he seemed a bit more adaptable in his formations and in his style of play. Because let's not forget, when he first came in, he was playing a lot differently to what he's playing now. We had Özil when he was talking about building the team around him. He played in a kind of three. You saw Xhaka kind of pull out to left back to allow Saka to kind of play as a winger when we were attacking, and you saw Özil in inside right attacking midfield position where he was causing problems and we were creating more. So it just seems weird that he's kind of seems so rigid now, but we are where we are.
Yeah. We are. Well, I don't know where that is really, but we are. Wherever that is where we are right now. Cian, I'm going to ask you a quick question, but before I do, this is your last chance, chat box. Last chance, not ever, just for today's show, to throw in your questions into the chat box for the last 15 or so minutes of the show. So if you've got one, make sure you throw them. Use the capital Q so they stand out for me in the chat. But Cian, the last question that I'm going to ask before we go into that section is around the midfield, because against Manchester United, we thought we'd experienced a revelation We thought we'd experience the next coming of of whatever it was meant to be, with El Neni and Partey partnering together. He started them again against Villa, and to be honest, I'll be really honest, I thought El Neni was very poor in the game, to be honest. Partey I thought was excellent until he went off, but then he went off and we conceded 2 more goals. But I still think there are elements of even his game where he lost the ball in a couple of scenarios as well. So I know that overall we didn't play well as a team, but do you think that Arteta needs to be more versatile with that midfield pivot selection, knowing that when we come up against sides like Man United, yeah, I think it can work in going with El Neni and Partey because they kind of form that rigid solidity that maybe we need at the back. But when we come up against the sides like Villa, where we can be a little bit more expressive and expansive, and when we've got this creativity drought right now, do you think we need to go in with a Ceballos, go in with a Xhaka over than say an El Neni? Than an El Neni. Is that the way of thinking, or is it something more less concrete than that?
Yeah, because for me, I think, especially when you said earlier, like we got that defensive unit with Partey in the sense of we could have played Ozil if it did come, because with that tracking back. And if we're going in more attacking, we have to go more attacking at home. Last night just proved it. So for me, I think away games, fair enough, against the big teams, play on El Neni, Partey, and have maybe like Ceballos or something playing centre attacking midfield. And because as we know from the FA Cup run and stuff like that, Ceballos is very good at defensively sometimes as well. So I think going attacking wise, then have Partey with Ceballos and then play the likes of Willock, because for me, I was actually very against Willock at the start. I said he should go out on loan for a while. But for now, I think he should really move forward, be put into this team, because he's well able to find a pass when he needs to, or again, for me, I think he's got the legs. He's well able to run, and that's one thing why I'm so against Lacazette at the moment. I feel like he's just not interested anymore. He doesn't want to make the run, because going back to say Southampton when we played them last year, Nketiah was the one who ran at the goalkeeper. I don't see that anymore. I don't know if you do. Like the only time I saw it yesterday was when Partey went. So I just feel we need to start moving a bit more forward and try our best with like more attacking at home, because it's not interesting anymore.
No, it's really not, is it? It's really dull. Like I used to like look forward to watching Arsenal weekend, but now I wouldn't say I dread waiting to see Arsenal, because I don't, because obviously they're still the team when you're sitting there and you're praying. And I should say that, and I put it out on Twitter this morning, I said that Twitter and social media is the worst possible place where you can lay your bed of an opinion and die on it, because there is no point backing yourself into a corner where your opinion can't be inclined to change. Now, people who watch the show, and I said this on yesterday's Raw Reaction, know that I have backed Arteta to the hilt, supported him, wanted him to achieve. It doesn't mean that in 6 months, 6 weeks' time, if things aren't going well, that I might turn around and say that it's not working, he's not changing anything, he's not reacting. And in that sense, maybe that things, as Raph said, if he's been backed now by the owner and has therefore got the responsibility of that money that's been spent on him, and things aren't improving, then maybe you do need to look at things. But what I will say is all the time is that every Arsenal fan should, whether they like Arteta or not, or wanted him to be the coach or not, should be looking at him and hoping that he turns things around, hoping that he succeeds. Because the attitude to say that I didn't want him as manager, so I hope he fails, is the most ridiculous anti-fan, anti-supportive way of looking at your team. I didn't really want Emery, but by God, I wanted him to succeed. He didn't. And now I'm going to back this new manager until the club decide that he needs to move on. But I pray that he turns things around and he does react. Now, it is the time of the show with the last 10 minutes or so where we go into user questions. So, Drew, starting with Christopher Fung's question, which I need to scroll up and just gradually find because it just clicked off my screen. Here it is. Christopher Fung says, how do you start being more free-flowing and creative in attack without compromising the defensive resiliency that we've built?
I mean, a lot of that comes from midfield play. You know, if you think about the sides who can go and be free-flowing in attack. And again, you look at Liverpool as a prime example, particularly last season and maybe even the year before where they just missed out. they didn't have a ton of technical quality or creative nuance in midfield, but they did give that platform for their attacking players to go for the forward and be free flowing. That's the entire point. They had that base to operate off of. And we don't. We haven't had that. Now you could argue that we do, but we're still not allowing our front three or front four to go on and really express themselves. And even just that subtle change, even if you want to keep things highly structured and build from the back, but once you get into the final third or just outside of it, you allow your front players to go and be expressive. And you can think back, and you and I talk about this a lot, and we've mentioned it on previous shows, where you think about Barcelona under Pep, they still built from the back, methodical possession, but they would still allow their front players to really go on and affect the game, despite the structure and the recycled possession and the structure that they had in midfield and in defense. But we haven't really seen that with our forward players. But you do see that elsewhere. You even see it with Man City as well. They'll still operate similarly. Bayern operate similarly. Even Dortmund now to an extent. These are kind of those same clubs that they have that central structure, but they have players who are given that freedom. We don't have that freedom when we have the ball. I could understand it if we want to be highly structured without the ball. I think you should be. You should give yourselves the opportunity to keep a clean sheet as much as possible. But when you have the kind of players that we have in our ranks, both routine starters and also players in the pipeline, the younger players as well, we have those kind of players that can go on and affect things. So I think the change can be a simple one. I don't think we have to do a lot on a tactics board to go from being stable centrally, but also going on and affecting play further forward. So it doesn't require that much of a change for me. I think the change is literally Arteta just saying, this is the kind of stability I still want, but I still want the players to get involved. Have Pepe come central. Have him get on the ball. He's the kind of player who he can just cause you so many headaches. As Raph pointed out, if you look at Leo, while he might not be able to be direct here as much because we don't play counterattacking, even his quality on the ball will get defenders and midfielders in foul trouble. It'll pick up cards for them. He'll be able to drag defenders away to create space for someone like Ober Lacazette to run into that space, or even a Willock late run, kind of like a la Aaron Ramsey when he was in his pump. Right. So these are little tiny tweaks you can make that don't require a lot of overall adjustments on the tactics board that are going to really compromise the stability that we do have. So, I mean, I don't know why we can't change it, but we certainly can. I think we should, but it's not my decision. So.
After all that, it comes down to it's not your choice, so it doesn't matter. No, lovely stuff. Raph, I'm going to try and ask this question without the vein in my head popping out. David Key says, do you think that Aouar or a creative midfielder would have been more important than the Partey signing?
Don't forget to say transformative, Raph, or else you're going to be in trouble.
Yes, he's transformative.
Yeah, okay, yeah, transformative. I think that player in the squad was more important than the Partey addition in the squad during the summer. Having said that, I think that Partey was kind of like the exception to the rule in a sense. I think I always said if you could get both players, we could have probably done without necessarily getting Partey. Like I always said, you could have got Samare and Aouar. You could have got Samare and Szoboszlai. You could have even potentially got a Diawara, even a Sangare. Potentially, you could have, and they may have been able to service what you wanted to do. But if you were only going to get the one, then Partey, without a doubt, was the best player that you could have got in midfield regardless. So I say that to say that although I think that the creative player was the glaring issue that we needed, I think if we were going to obviously not play Özil again, I think that Partey kind of like vetoes everything in that. I think he was the best player on the market that we could have got, if that makes sense.
No, 100%. And I get the idea of it. Clearly, Arteta wanted the creative player. He desperately wanted Aouar. He's in love with Aouar, it looks like.
Yeah,
I should say, if you don't follow Jeremy Smith 98, you should give him a follow on Twitter. He comes on the show quite a lot talking about French football, and his timeline is full of criticism of Houssem Aouar at the moment. It's quite entertaining.
Yeah, he's not playing that well, is he?
No, he's not. He's
no one in Lyon is not for nothing.
No, it's a fair point. But he has he's been called overrated by Jeremy quite a lot this season, and apparently when he was brought off Leon looked a lot better. Yesterday, I think it was yesterday. So yeah, and he made sure he texted me about it.
I would personally buy Szoboszlai, not because I think he's necessarily even better. But I've said it from before as well, because I think that the deal is just easier. That's just me personally. I think it's an easier deal. I think it was muted 24 million euros and you can pay 8 million a year. It's just an easier deal in installments. That's what I mean. And also, if it isn't the bot, it's like, isn't there anyone else? Like one of my main gripes.
I don't want his face when you're talking about Szoboszlai.
One of my main gripes with the whole hour thing and the Partey thing was like, Arteta said that we had 4 or 5 options if we didn't get our primary targets. Like, I think that just kind of got glossed over. But what happened to them? Like, is there nobody else that we had like any kind of, you know, like, where was our scouting? I just think that it doesn't.
We made them redundant, mate.
This is what I mean. Yeah. It doesn't have to be the name brand players. It just has to be players that can fill that position. Like, that's where scouting comes in my opinion. Anyway.
See, I mean, I'm with Raph on that, and I do think. I mean, Tom mentioned it. Szoboszlai, you know, it was genuine that we were in for him, and Tom can attest to that. But he made the decision to stay one more year in Austria. So I think that's what
he could have gone somewhere else as well. He could have gone to Milan. Milan pretty much had that deal wrapped up.
He could have, and I know that. And this is going to be another Upamecano thing I had to deal with like last season as well. So I can't wait for that. But I think it's that profile of player. I think this goes back to what Raph was just saying. And if you want a player of that ilk, you know, historically we struggled so much with waiting weeks on weeks to get this one player, and then we didn't get that one player, and then we scrambled for a plan B or plan C, and it never came off, right? So if you want that profile of player, there's 5 or 6 other players that you could probably rattle off to think about that you might want. Just don't put all your eggs in one basket. But it's clear that
I have.
That's true. That's a very good point. But I feel like, you know, Raph brings up a good point where he said if you want those two types of players in terms of profiling, then we could have gotten both. It just would have meant not Partey or Aouar. It could have been Sangare and Szoboszlai, and then understand that they're younger and they're not completely fleshed out in terms of their abilities yet, but you grow with them because this is a project. So you grow with a good core of younger players like you see other clubs do around Europe. So, Bayern. I mean, there are options. Bayern, you know, I don't want to rattle off clubs, but it's clear we need more unless we're prepared to trust players who we do have. Which goes back to the Willock discussion. Maybe we'll see. No, I mean,
last question from Gary Hardy, Cian. He says, with Albert signing his contract and being captain, do you think everything should be set up to support him and get the best out of him?
Yeah, like, let's be honest, he's our top goal scorer. He's 31 years of age. There's a reason we kept him on. And at the end of the day, when he was coming to contract talks, Arteta did say he wants to build his team around Aubameyang. So he should listen to Aubameyang and be like, okay, what position do you want to play in? You're playing there, and we work around it. And I think that's why, when that came out, why we're being linked with the likes of Wilfried Zaha. So yeah, with Gary, I think Aubameyang is our captain. Like, with the whole thing that happened with Granit Xhaka, he didn't really ask to be captain. It was kind of just thrown at him. He's not really a leader. For me, I still think we should be more of a defender, or maybe, I know people don't like him, but Leno, maybe, like, have somebody that's watching everything, be able to dictate who is being managed or who is being where.
I think Gabriel's captain quality all day long, to be honest. He just can't communicate really right now.
I don't think they'll give it to him. Like, for me, Hector Bellerin is vice captain. Bellerin does tell people what to do. He's really getting sticked at Saka lately. Tierney, he's another leader, I think. But again, their performances aren't great. But for me, Aubameyang is the name. So if you have a big name as your captain, people want to support. That's the way I'm looking at him being our captain. I can't see him being a huge leader, because if he was a bigger leader on the pitch, he'd be well able to tell the players to move up, be more expressive, be attacking. But again, that could be Arteta.
I can't see. I get your point because I can't see Aubameyang being the type to. He's too jokey. He's too like want to be your matey kind of character. And
for me, like, one of the games being captain, it was actually against Villa last time when we lost 1-0. He was laughing with Mings in the middle of the box. So for me, that's not a captain. That's a goal scorer and a leader, or not a leader, or a goal scorer and a vibe guy. Really.
If we're honest, sorry to cut you. If we're honest,
go for it.
Xhaka and I think David Luiz and Xhaka are pretty much our captains. If we were unofficially, I think if you listen to all the noise and you listen to some of the players in regards to how they actually approach day-to-day training, how they approach the players, how the influence in the actual like the voices in the dressing room, it sounds as though they're the two biggest voices and they're the most authority figures. I think Aubameyang's good in terms of cohesion and morale, and I think he leads by example. And I think he put Arsenal on his shoulders. So I think it's admirable. And I think there's two. I guess you can have two types of captains. I always remember Beckham. That Beckham wasn't necessarily like for England the most vocal and screaming and whatever. He was more of a lead by example captain, where you have a John Terry who will scream and even Gerrard was a lead by example captain. Carragher was always the more vocal one. So you don't always have to have that type of striker, or captain, sorry. But I think if you have them in the team, I just think you just don't have enough of those type of players, of the Xhakas and the Luizes.
Yeah, no, I agree with you.
The only thing I would say is that all those players you mentioned, and you're 100% spot on about those players leading by example. Those players also never dropped their heads when things went wrong. They were the first ones to keep their heads up. Oba is often the first one to drop his head when things go wrong. So that is the criticism of him being captain. And I feel like there's nothing wrong with making your star striker captain necessarily, but they also have to be the ones they always lead by example no matter what circumstances. And as much as I absolutely can't stand the club and the man, it's very rare that Harry Kane doesn't put a shift in for Spurs. Even when he's not playing well, he'll still do what it takes to maybe sort of lead by just working hard. Oba a lot of times will drift in and out of matches when things aren't going his way. So, and that's something you can very easily correct. This isn't me damning him as a person saying where he's a lost cause. He has to make that decision within himself to make that change, and it's possible. And if he does, then we're all the better for it, and so is he. So it's not a lost cause, and there's no reason to press a panic button. But you could probably maybe question the original making him as captain in the first place. I do think that was maybe pandering to his ego as a player, and maybe trying to make sure you want to keep him here, so you make him captain. That's not the first time it's happened in professional sports, even outside of football. So, but we'll see how it goes.
I think we are making improvements, though, in terms of the personalities that we're getting in. I mean, you look at from, say, Tierney signing, and I'm not saying all of them, because I still think the club are making mistakes recruitment-wise. I mean, you look at Cedric as an example, but, I feel like I've got it in for Cedric so much. But, Kieran Tierney, mentality of that guy, Gabriel, the mentality of him, Thomas Partey, these guys, their mentalities, where they've come from, they are the types of personality that we need in the team. I like David Luiz's mentality personally. I know that he makes mistakes and I know that he costs us sometimes, but his mentality in terms of the dressing room, like what you were talking about, Raph, I think is really key. A lot of people have it in for Granit Xhaka, but also he is captain material in terms of what he's done. Otherwise, he wouldn't be being picked for Switzerland. He wouldn't be being picked for Gladbach at the age that he was when he was given the captaincy there. So it is clear that these players, we have some characters within the squad, but when your captain is Aubameyang, and as Drew says, as when his head does drop, and as Cian said, he's not a leader. And people brought up Thierry Henry in the chat box, but the thing about Thierry Henry is, one, that he's an iconic player for the club when he was captain. He'd earned that right, and his head never dropped. I feel like you need that level of arrogance as a captain to. It doesn't matter what you say or how you're perceived by other people. You put your rhetoric on the other players, and it's either your way or no way, and you do what the coach wants you to do. And I felt that Henry had that. Whilst I didn't think he was an amazing captain, he still had way more qualities to be that leader, than what Aubameyang does. I think Aubameyang's kind of just there as he's kind of the guy that Arsenal have kind of relied on, and that's maybe why he was given that captaincy. Anyway, that brings today's show to a close. So thank you ever so much for listening, chat box. We hope that we've helped your therapy in some way. Raph, a sigh of relief that it's done. We don't need to talk about Aston Villa again, mate. But it's a pleasure having you on, son.
It was more of a sigh because we didn't get to speak about Saliba, but another time. Another time.
There will be, trust me, there will be chances.
There will be
we'll have plenty of time to talk about
Saliba. I'm
joking. Plenty of time. And I mean, tell people where they can find you, mate, and what you're up to.
Messi Music on Twitter, Instagram. Just Arsenal enthusiast, and obviously music extraordinaire. No, I'm joking, but man, just
I've seen his videos. He ain't lying. He isn't lying.
Yeah.
Awesome stuff. Thank you, Raph. Drew, always a pleasure, my friend. Thank you for gracing us with your image on camera, which is a nice change.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for having me again, as usual, good sir. Raph, I'm sorry we didn't get the duel at dawn, but maybe another time.
Do you want to tell people about your player profile that you've helped me out with that came out today, and your piece on?
You've been doing a bunch of good work at 101. So you came to me with getting some thoughts on Ozan Kabak and a couple other players, Jadon Sancho and Erling Haaland. So I helped you out with that. So hopefully look out for those, for Tom's good work to continue. And I wrote just a small reaction piece at Yama unexpectedly about the nature of the Villa result. And I mean, I've kind of really shelved a lot of my Arsenal writing, so I'm just focusing on Bundesliga. But
help yourself.
I need that cathartic kind of I needed to vent, or else I was gonna punch something or somebody through a wall. This was the first time I've been that level of piss since maybe the Birmingham final. I mean, I was livid yesterday, and that doesn't really happen often, so I had to write. So I wrote.
So it doesn't happen. What?
Yeah, not that level. I mean, I might get.
We know what you're like in the WhatsApp group, Drew.
No, I might be a grumpy old man and whatnot, but I don't get angry. But I was angry yesterday. It was one of those days. But yeah, no, I'm still writing on Get German Football. And just contributing there, and got a couple other projects going on. So yeah. So.
Awesome. And finally, Cian, thank you for coming, mate. Fantastic debut. Tell people where they can find you on the social medias.
To be honest, I'm very boring. No, it's just this way. Cian Reardon, you can check me out on Twitter, Instagram. I'm new to all this Arsenal stuff, talk about Arsenal. So there's not much up there at the moment. But if you check out, as we said at the start, your feed, myself and Tom, we're part of the Arsenal fans. I'm also part of the fantasy football section, so if you want to I'm going to make up a league soon enough, so if you all want to be involved in that, let me know. I'll put a code up. But yeah, thanks very much for giving me a part, and I hope you're on it again soon.
Yeah, I mean, as you say, for someone that's never, ever done a podcast before, it was a great debut, mate. So thank you for coming on. And yeah, as Cian said, make sure you check out your feed. I will be, as I said, probably doing a dedicated show explaining all of that in a lot more detail when it's up and running and we've got to grips with it a lot more. But it's an exciting project that I'm looking forward to getting involved with a lot more with Cian and Dre and Cass. So 100% look out for that. Thank you to our members, as always, helping to support the channel. All of our expert members, thank you so much, guys, for helping out, and our TGT ambassadors as well. Absolute legends. We have had a few more people sign up, and I promised that I was going to update that spreadsheet, and I will. But thank you ever so much, and I will get to that. It's been hectic. It's fair to say, as Drew said, we're over at 101. We're doing a lot of hard work with player profiles. There is one on Dominic Jobbersley. Please make sure you go give that a read and check it out. But as we've done Kabak, we've done oh my god, I'm forgetting. We've done Jeremy Frimpong, who's no relation as far as I'm aware of the Arsenal Frimpong, but a young Dutch right back at Celtic. Really exciting. Someone I genuinely would look at in the future as possibly a Bellerin replacement. We've got, who else have we got? We've got Jules Koundé from Sevilla, the French centre-back, very, very good young guy. And as I said earlier, Drew's helped us out with one on Ozan Kabak. So check that one out. Get your European football insight and knowledge. There's more coming out over the next few days. Drew's helped us out with one on Erling Haaland and Jadon Sancho, so they'll be coming out soon. Jeremy Smith is helping us out with one on Eduardo Camavinga, which I know a lot of people are very excited about as a young guy as well. So there's lots of stuff that's going to be coming out there. And the usual 101 news. I put a piece out there this morning, but as I was pretty much like Drew, I was very angry and wanted to put my thoughts down in a piece, so I put one up there this morning too. So make sure you check the guys out on Twitter and their social medias. And other than that, it's been a pleasure to speak to you as it always is. We'll see you again very, very soon. And as always, up the Arsenal.